of its guests, advertisers, or even its viewers. The information contained in this program is not to be confused with medical or legal advice. An appearance on this platform is not necessarily an endorsement, but as always, we encourage you to do your own research. Enjoy the show.
Good evening, everyone. And of course, welcome back. Yes, it's time for another very exciting episode of Red Pill News Live, Friday edition. While things are not looking good for Eric Swalwell, from what I understand, he's sitting around just moping, wondering when the next shoe's going to drop, wondering to himself, God, what do they have on me? What else do they know? Who else have they been speaking to? You know, it's moments like these where the only thing you can do is basically just wallow in your own self-pity. And I bet you that's what Eric's doing right now. Principal Enigma, thank you, sir. God bless this broadcast and those that present it. Appreciate you. Well, we do have quite a few stories that we're going to be discussing today. I've got a long section for us, of course, on immigration and H-1B fraud. We've got a couple of updates on Dr. David Morin's situation. When we spoke about that last week and we learned that he had pled guilty, first thing I noticed was that there were co-conspirators that had not yet been named. Of course, that means that Dr. David Morin's is making a deal with the federal government, and there are more people yet to be indicted. So we've learned a few key pieces of information related to that. And, of course, Eric and his deal. So do me a favor, everyone. Sit back, relax, and, of course, grab your popcorn, because we're going to be right back after this.
Science proves that a healthy immune system is the body's first defense against the smallest of ailments to the most catastrophic. Coriolus Versicolor is the most sought-after, all-natural supplement for both humans and pets to help boost the immune system. There are over 400 studies worldwide on its effectiveness in humans, including Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, MD Anderson Cancer Center, and now from the University of Pennsylvania School of Veterinary Medicine. Together, we can help reverse this terrible tide now plaguing your loved ones and give them the immune-boosting supplements that they need.
All right. Welcome back, everyone. Thank you for being here. So, B. Arthur, you don't have the situation quite in hand. Let me explain it to you. So, as I told you yesterday, the predicate for the investigation by the federal government, the FBI, and the Department of Justice, that predicate was the sexual assaults. That doesn't mean that the sexual assaults are the only thing that he will be indicted for, or even that that is what they'll decide to go with at the end of the day. We don't actually know 100% what the indictments are going to be, but I do have some information about exactly what the circumstances were under which the FBI searched Eric Swalwell's home and broadened their investigation beyond simply the sexual assaults. Now, let's be real clear here. For rape, for drugging women and raping them in multiple states around the country, that is the kind of crime that you can get life in prison for. So even if Eric Swalwell isn't specifically indicted and tried for treason, then he could still spend the rest of his life in prison. And the sad thing about the treason aspect is that's the way we look at it. But when you look at the original investigation from when they went after Fang Fang, it would appear that the Department of Justice determined that Eric Swalwell's activities seem to be less than cognizant in regards to what Miss Fang Fang was doing. So don't lose hope, because there's a lot of different things that Eric Swalwell could be investigated for and could be indicted for. We still have plenty of time to come to those things. We are going to instead begin with an update on a story I brought you earlier this week about Sharia-compliant mortgages. Now, this was discovered, I believe, by Natalie Winters. She had found, or maybe it was somebody else, excuse me if I'm not giving proper attribution here, but there was some language in FHA documentation which mentioned Sharia-compliant mortgages, which are obviously mortgages that Muslim people are going to get when they get houses. Now, Bill Pulte saw that and he said, you know what, I need to look into this. I want to understand exactly what is written into the code because it was nothing that he had heard about before. Now, I want to be real clear. Sharia compliant or Islamic mortgages are not the only type of religious lending that is going on here in the United States. There's also kosher mortgages, which are for Jewish people. And then there's also Amish mortgages, which are clearly for the Amish. So I'll tell you a little bit more about those in just a moment. But Bill Pulte went and looked into the concept of Islamic mortgages. And he said that he claimed to the Gateway Pundit that Fannie and Freddie do not actually give out Sharia mortgages. So apparently mortgages that are based on a particular religious sect are actually given out by smaller financing companies. So essentially regional banks. And in the specific instance of an Islamic mortgage, as Bill Pulte defined it, is given out by a company called Guidance Residential. So this is actually a private Islamic-only home financing company. And so what they do is they bring Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac these mortgages that they have already agreed to with people. And then basically, just as Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac purchase these mortgages from banks all around the country, they do the exact same thing with this. So the government is not handing out these religious specific mortgages. And the same is true of kosher mortgages. The same is true of Amish mortgages. But this company that is in question, Guidance Residential, they describe their product as an Islamic co-ownership financing. And that is where the specific nature of the mortgage really comes into play. So instead of a normal mortgage where like I would put down 20% on a house, and maybe that would vary, but a conventional mortgage, that's generally what you're asked to do. Instead of doing that and then getting charged interest on that mortgage, in the instance of these Islamic mortgages, Guidance Financial purchases a home alongside the buyer. And the same is true of the Amish mortgages and the kosher mortgages. And then the buyer gradually acquires the company's ownership in that home while they are paying for the share that they own. Now, initially, and this is something that I suspected, when people learned about these things, they said, well, what about the interest? If people are getting Islamic mortgages or people are getting kosher mortgages or people are getting Amish mortgages and they're not being charged interest, then how is the financial company making money? Well, instead of charging the interest over the length of the loan, what they do is they roll the 30-year cost of what would be the interest into the purchase price of that home. And then as the individual buyer is paying the financial company for the home, they are actually still paying for what would essentially be interest. It's just not called interest, but they are paying just as much for these homes as you or I would. So Guidance says this arrangement was constructed specifically to satisfy Sharia principles, which prohibit interest. And of course, in the Jewish faith, they also make it so that you can't charge interest. It's okay if you charge Goy interest, but you can't charge another Jew interest. And they also claim that they have a Sharia board and 18 law firms that developed a contract under which Freddie Mac can participate without purchasing any conventional debt. So Guidance brings on Freddie Mac as an additional investor, essentially. Now, federal data shows that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac may have become the primary investors in these Islamic mortgages, which inject, of course, billions of dollars in liquidity into the market. And the Center for Security Policy and other national security analysts have warned for years that Sharia-compliant finance can serve as a vehicle for broader ideological penetration and potential material support networks. under previous administrations, the practice continued largely without scrutiny at the highest levels we've seen in years. But now, earlier this month, because Pulte and the administration have become aware of it, they are examining their continued, I guess, participation in these types of loans. I haven't actually seen them say that they are examining their participation in kosher loans or in Amish loans, but they are examining it certainly in the in the Islamic loans. Now, I have to say, I think that if it would piss me off a lot if the people who were getting these loans were not having to pay interest effectively over the life of the loans. If they only had to pay for the purchase price of the homes, then that would certainly be unfair. I don't like the idea that the government is getting involved in these loans, which have this specific religious and ideological framework to them, because I agree with the Center for Security Policy. This does create a sort of Sharia creep into the American system. Personally, I would be totally comfortable if there was a law in the United States that if you want to buy a home, you would have to do it under the standard mortgage practice. So if you don't want to pay interest, or your religion states that you can't pay interest or be charged interest, then maybe you shouldn't buy a home here. And I think that that would apply for just about everybody. Now, the other thing is, because kosher loans, Amish loans, and Islamic loans don't effectively pay interest, even though they essentially do, they don't get the tax benefits of doing these things. And I don't know if they have any easier time with, I guess, loan forgiveness, or if they have a lower or higher rate of foreclosure on these things. But I personally, I think that ultimately the mortgage industry is a total fraud. I'm sure that there are probably people in the audience that are in banking or in mortgage and that sort of thing. But the amount of money that I pay for interest on the house that I live in, by the time that I will be done paying off my mortgage, I will have effectively paid for my home like 3 times over. And that absolutely is not cool with me. And I don't think that it should be cool with anybody. I don't think anybody should have to do that sort of thing. But now the other part of this is, in order to make this something that I guess is maybe more democratized, Bill Pulte has said that all of these special types of loans are now open and available to all Americans. So if you want an Islamic loan, or you want a kosher loan, or you want an Amish loan, and you don't want a conventional mortgage, you now have the ability to go and apply for one of those. And then you won't have to worry about paying interest. But then again, if your goal is to get a tax benefit because you're purchasing a home, you're not going to get that anymore. Anyways, you get screwed no matter how you do this. There's really no way around it. But that solves the mystery of the Islamic loans. All right, now let's talk a little bit about Dr. David Morans. So as I was saying the other day when we were reading through his guilty plea, it was pretty obvious that he was making a deal with the government. By pleading guilty, David Morans was agreeing to some type of deal. The Department of Justice likely came to him and said, hey, listen, if you just plead guilty, you can testify against your co-conspirators. We will agree to put you in prison for X number of years. You will have X number of fines, and you will have X number of years of post-conviction release afterwards, where you'll be on parole. Otherwise, you can take your chances. You can go to court, and we will spend all of your money and force you to spend all of your money and pay your lawyers. This way, he doesn't have to worry about that, and there's probably a number of people that Dr. David Morans could testify against that are not even part of his actual case. So if you're at all confused about who Dr. David Morans is, he was a senior advisor to Dr. Anthony Fauci at the National Institute for Allergy and Infectious Diseases. They worked alongside each other for 16 years. He pled guilty to conspiracy. That alone tells you that there are more than David Morans that's involved in the crime. A conspiracy is necessarily 2 or more people involved in the commission of a crime and the planning of a crime. But he admitted to working with two specifically so that they could conceal agency records from public view. Now, when he was initially indicted and they mentioned the presence of co-conspirators, my initial thought and what I said on the air was that it was likely EcoHealth Alliance and Dr. Peter Daszak, because we had emails from David Morens speaking with Peter Daszak and talking about the action of covering up their communications so that they wouldn't have to worry about FOIA requests. But the records in this particular case, and as we looked through Dr. David Morens' guilty plea the other day, deal specifically with the National Institute of Health and their grant to Company One. That, of course, I believe would be EcoHealth Alliance, even though that's not explicitly stated right now. But they mention that it's an entity that sponsored coronavirus research at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. There's only one such entity that has gained global and nationwide attention in the last several years. And just a couple of months after the COVID-19 pandemic spread to the United States, we had the cancellation of the NIH's bat coronavirus grant to this very company. As it reviewed allegations, the laboratory was likely the source of the leak after President Donald Trump acknowledged his awareness of that very same grant in April of 2020. So even though prosecutors don't state that Company One is EcoHealth Alliance, this is a former New York-based nonprofit headed by Dr. Peter Daszak. That was Dr. Anthony Fauci's pass-through agency there, where they funded this controversial gain-of-function research at the Wuhan Institute of Virology in China. There's really no other way to read that. Now, at the time, the questions that swirled around the origins of COVID-19 and the spreading of this virus around the globe, federal officials and federal health officials were assessing their agency's exposure to that research. So everybody kind of started looking to see if they had any direct ties to EcoHealth, if they were in communication with Dr. Peter Daszak. Where were subgrants going? Were they receiving any subgrants? Was the Wuhan Institute of Virology at all connected to any of these various organizations? Because, of course, that's at the center of the controversy, even if they had attempted to gaslight the American people in the entire world and say that it came from a bat and a pangolin. Now, while the focus has up until this point been on Morens because of his guilty plea, in that plea, we have the significant detail about the overall conspiracy and the identity of Dr. Peter Daszak. It's an implication. Again, it's not a name, but there is no other way that you can decode what is happening in that indictment. He is co-conspirator one. In that scheme that they are prosecuting Dr. David Morens for, they're looking to avoid FOIA requests. And they raise the possibility that this British zoologist could face his own legal jeopardy for his involvement in the creation and the spread of COVID-19. Now, the agreement has already been signed by Morens. It lays out in detail how he, Daszak, and then another co-conspirator worked to conceal records related to EcoHealth's coronavirus research grant and how they used Morens' status as a senior advisor to advance the interests of EcoHealth within the National Institutes of Health. So from that indictment on or about April 25th, 2020, after learning about the cancellation of the bat coronavirus grant from co-conspirator one, Morens forwarded the communications with co-conspirator one and co-conspirator two from his NIH email account to his Gmail account, or according to the stipulation of facts that is appended to Morens' plea deal. Morens then emailed co-conspirator one and co-conspirator two, and he said, "This is sent from my Gmail account. Please send all replies here to Gmail. There are things I can't say except senior NIAID official one, has to be Fauci, is aware, and I have learned that there are ongoing efforts within NIH to steer through this with minimal damage to you, co-conspirator one, Peter Daszak, and colleagues, and to the NIH and NIAID. Now, it also states that Morens' effort to initiate the conspiracy to conceal records from federal scrutiny was done explicitly. And then after the conversations were moved from Dr. David Morens' work email over to his personal Gmail account, he, his co-conspirator one and two, and others others. Those people have not been specified, but that means that there are even more people who can likely be indicted as a result, plotted and repeatedly expressed their intention to conceal federal records to evade FOIA and provide information to senior NIAID official 1 and that was favorable to co-conspirator 1 and company 1. David Morans also specified in his email at one point that there was a woman who had taught him how to avoid FOIA requests, and she was the one who was supposed to be gathering up all of this information. So I would be pleased as punch if she was to get indicted as well. The government goes on to allege that co-conspirator 1, Dasick, provided and promised to provide Morans with things of value for or because of official acts and behind-the-scenes shenanigans, favorable to co-conspirator 1 and company 1, including gifts of 2 bottles of the Prisoner Red Napa Valley wine after Morans drafted the article favorable to EcoHealth Alliance. Now, the gift included the following message from Dasick. This is the first of what I hope will be a continued series of expressions of gratitude for your advice, support, and behind-the-scenes shenanigans in my battle against your bosses, his boss, and the ultimate boss on the Hill. It takes courage and commitment to do what you've done, given your job and the vindictive nature of the administration. I am eternally grateful for that, and I hope that I will be able to return the favor one day. In the meantime, cheers. Now, the government also identified a scientific commentary that was written by Morans. That commentary argued that COVID-19 emerged from nature and definitely not from a scientific laboratory. This was one of the acts that was done on behalf of, for the benefit of, EcoHealth and Peter Dasick. The scientific commentary, the indictment said, was to benefit Company 1 and co-conspirator 1. And there was also the House Select Subcommittee on the coronavirus pandemic, which first uncovered evidence in 2024 that Morans was using his personal Gmail account, again, to move outside of the scope of any possible FOIA requests. They did this with the intention of discussing NIH grants with EcoHealth. And earlier this year, the Department of Health and Human Services officially cut all federal funding. They also disbarred EcoHealth and its former president, Peter Dasick, from receiving any federal grants for at least 5 years. And the decision came after the department suspended EcoHealth Alliance's initial funding back in May of 2024. They also recommended a permanent ban on all funding for this particular nonprofit. They went so far as to suggest that EcoHealth and Dasick's disbarment, because of the nonprofit having been repeatedly violating the terms of their NIH grants, but the agency did not make a final decision on this until January of last year. So the National Institutes of Health also sent a letter in January 2022 to the now defunct EcoHealth, notifying that nonprofit that it was in non-compliance with 8 parts of a written agreement with the U.S. government. And according to that letter, EcoHealth's sub-award agreements lacked several required components, such as having to follow federal statutes and receive funding. And EcoHealth also did not provide procedures for directing and monitoring the research effort that report found. So I am extremely anxious to see where this case goes. When or where will Peter Dasick be indicted? Who is co-conspirator 2? And how far are they willing to take this? Because this is clearly a conspiracy that spread far beyond these 3 people and this one company. I'm hoping that we're going to get as many indictments as we possibly can. It would appear that the administration wants to move full steam ahead on this. If there is anything else that Dr. David Morans can offer assistance on, I believe the DOJ would probably want to go down that route too. Are there other crimes that were likely committed? Were there other grants that were inappropriate? Was there payoffs that were going on? Et cetera, et cetera. You can figure out that there are just innumerable crimes that likely may have been committed during his time there at the organization. All right. Now, yesterday, President Trump did an interview with Michael Cohen, and people were up in arms about it. Personally, I don't care. President Trump is the president of the United States. He can do an interview with whomever he wants. And it was already reported a couple of months ago that Michael Cohen and President Trump met up again at Bedminster, and they shook hands. Michael Cohen apologized to him, and he told him that he had basically been railroaded by Alvin Bragg and by Tish James. And as such, he wanted to make sure that the president knew that he was sorry for what he had done, for the things he had said. And so President Trump, he let him apologize. And he said, okay, let's let bygones be bygones. I'll come and do your show, Michael. How's that? And so they did the show. And in the course of the show, essentially, he once again publicly proclaimed that President Trump had done nothing wrong, that the testimony he gave had been illegally basically forced out of him, and it completely destroys the still ongoing hush money case because it's still an appeal. So President Trump then shared this clip of the only semi-sensible lawyer that ever appears on CNN, Eli Honig. And so I just thought we would listen to this because I think it's totally relevant.
Anyone who cheered that hush money prosecution of Donald Trump 2 years ago has nothing left to stand on, because now the star witness, the guy who is the reason why every prosecutor who looked at this case, including the Biden DOJ, the prior liberal Democratic DA, passed on charging this case, is because they didn't trust Michael Cohen beyond a reasonable doubt. Alvin Bragg rolled that dice, and now Michael Cohen has said publicly that he, quote, felt pressured and coerced by prosecutors. So where do you stand on Michael Cohen now? If you believe he's a truth teller, then he felt pressured and coerced by prosecutors. That's not acceptable. If you believe he's a liar, then your case is built on a liar. So that case is going through its appeal process incredibly slowly. I think there are major legal infirmities with it, but now the factual predicate has collapsed as well.
So you've got problems with the judge, you've got problems with the prosecution, and now you've got problems with the star witness. At the time that Michael Cohen was arrested and pursued, during President Trump's first term, I said at the time, I don't think Michael Cohen did anything wrong. I thought that he was being pursued because he was loyal to President Trump. And I think throughout this entire time, he's just been an operator. He's been playing a part. And essentially, President Trump, I believe, would have known that because they were going after Cohen, it was only a matter of time before they went after him. Michael Cohen has been rewarded handsomely for the heartache that he's had to endure. He's gotten a book deal. He's got a radio show. He's still got his family. He spent 10 years by President Trump's side as his most loyal lieutenant. And then all of a sudden he just turns his back on him. It was always clear that Michael Cohen had been coerced to do what he did. And so I always thought that it was clear that Michael Cohen and President Trump were going to kiss and make up and everything was going to be fine. But what Michael Cohen has done by coming out while this case is an appeal and essentially casting shadows on everything that's happened when there's already so many shadows that are cast on this case, I think that he has essentially helped President Trump once again by ensuring that this will likely be thrown out on appeal. This case is not going to go anywhere. And now we also learned that the daughter of the judge is under criminal investigation. I mean, turnabout's fair play. And these people who have tried to use the system against President Trump are all having the system turned around and used against them. This is a good thing. This is a very good thing. I welcome Michael Cohen back into the fold. I've got no problem with it. All right. Now, I wanted to play this clip for you yesterday, but I didn't get a chance to. My buddy Brad had clipped it out, and it's Stephen Miller essentially talking about how the mainstream media should be forced to register as agents of the Democrat Party. And this is, I think, goes right in line with the same people who went after Michael Cohen and the media that then welcomed him into the fold once they thought that he was an enemy of Trump.
The legacy media, Sean, is fundamentally corrupt. They are an extension of, an arm of the Democrat Party. Honestly, Sean, the media, the legacy media like CBS and ABC and NBC and every other legacy outlet exists to serve and advance the interests of the Democrat Party. Throw in New York Times, throw in Washington Post, throw in The Atlantic. They should all be required to register as a Democrat political action committee. I mean, let's just think through some of the things that you mentioned. President Trump has been in office in his second term for a year and a half and has solved problems that plagued this nation for decades, generations, or even longer. I mean, just go through the foreign policy piece here. He's completely rebalanced our trading relationship with Canada. He has protected American manufacturing and essential supply chains from China. He has completely rebalanced NATO and ensured that other nations pay their fair share. He is now pursuing peace in the Korean Peninsula, which hasn't been achieved since the armistice in the 1950s. President Trump has single-handedly toppled Maduro, freed the people of Venezuela, and secured the greatest boon for America's energy and supply chains probably in the history of our country. He's taken the fight to the drug cartels, declared them a foreign terrorist organization, used military power to fight these enemies of human civilization. And as you have mentioned, he stopped Iran, the Islamic theocracy of Iran, from obtaining a nuclear weapon that could destroy an entire city. And now you come at home, he's unleashed American energy, he's building pipelines, he's bringing the price of gas down from the heinous highs of the Biden administration, he's taken inflation from the highest level in American history down to 2%. The largest tax cut in American history, no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, no tax on overtime, and he took the most unsecure, dangerous, violent, hellish border in the history of our republic, and 15 straight months, Sean, of zero releases, zero into the country.
And yet still the mainstream media cannot give President Trump the win on any of those things. So Norlad V says, shouldn't it be the same thing for Fox News and the Republican Party? No, because they still have people on Fox News who do not like Donald Trump. And think about all of the years that Fox News gave negative coverage to President Trump. You might have had some people on there who like what he's doing, but Fox News does not glaze the president in the same way that every single mainstream media outlet besides them tries to set the president and his accomplishments and his agenda on fire. Let me give you a perfect example of that. Here's some coverage by Jake Tapper, where Jake Tapper covers the withdrawal of the United States from Afghanistan, which, need I remind any of you here, that happened under the tenure of Joseph Robinette Biden. And during the reporting on this disastrous withdrawal, Jake Tapper invokes the name of President Trump on multiple occasions, but he never once mentions Joe Biden, even though Joe Biden was the president. Joe Biden was the one who oversaw that withdrawal. This is exactly the sort of thing that Stephen Miller is talking about, and that I think we have talked about on this channel on so many different occasions. So this anniversary of the horrific fall of Kabul is what Jake Tapper is talking about. And there isn't a shred of objectivity in this. He simply goes on to smear President Trump over and over and over again, blaming the loss of American lives on President Trump, blaming the deaths of Afghani citizens on President Trump. You know, this is such fake news. I don't need to go into any more detail, but I'm sure you understand the point that I'm trying to make. Now, we also have an announcement here from President Trump regarding the continued tenure of one Ed Martin, Eagle Ed Martin. So President Trump has announced that Eagle Ed Martin is going to be leaving his position at the DOJ. He says, Ed Martin has been with me from the very beginning, and he's done an incredible job as an attorney, director of the Weaponization Working Group, and the United States Attorney for the District of Columbia. Ed is now leaving to go outside to fight legal battles for the upcoming midterm election and the presidential election of 2028. I know he will do an outstanding job, ensure free, fair, and honest elections, and strongly advance our constitutional rights. Good luck, Ed, President Donald J. Trump. Now, Ed has not responded to this in any, meaningful sense. He basically had said, just something. What he said, no MAGA left behind. That was a year ago. And he says now more than ever, 14 hours ago. He also had posted a blog post the other day about why the power of the pardon was so meaningful to him. I saw people suggest maybe Ed Martin was going to let us down because he was going to pardon someone, but that hasn't happened. I mean, I don't think that he's pardoned anybody who didn't deserve it. But he also retweeted President Trump's announcement here, and he said, proud to serve, fight, fight, fight. So I think just the indication is that the administration believes that Ed is going to be more impactful out there, essentially fighting in the trenches to make sure that the midterms and then the presidential election coming up in a couple of years is going to be as fair as possible. From a legal sense, you've got to have somebody coordinating those things. And now you've got a lot of attorneys that are going to be fighting on behalf of America rather than fighting against America. And with that, I have this announcement as well. Not that long ago, I had brought the news that there was some challenges to the American Bar Association in Texas and Florida. They were essentially being denied the right to certify law schools in those states specifically, which meant that the states themselves were going to be doing the certification for the schools. That gives an opportunity for law schools to be taught from a perspective of real law rather than a perspective of using the law to fight against your ideological enemies. And so many of these people who become lawyers, they are leftists and they are taught to, hate America and all of these things, to let immigrants take over the country, to let illegals take over the country. But now the education department under Linda McMahon is moving to entirely remove the American Bar Association's authority to accredit law schools all across the country. This is very, very positive. So the education department today began the process of removing the American Bar Association. They are going to withdraw their authority to accredit law schools. And that was an announcement coming from David Barker, who is Linda McMahon's Assistant Secretary of Education. Now, you know how corrupt the American Bar Association is. The administration has accused this organization of promoting progressive agendas, including pushing law schools to adopt diversity, equity, and inclusion policies as a part of their accreditation. Well, now they won't be able to do that anymore. Now, the ABA is not the only accreditor in town, but they are the nation's leading law school accreditor, and they have reviewed nearly 200 law schools. But the accreditation process is a quality check that schools are required to obtain in order to access federal student loan funds. In most states, graduates of schools without ABA approval cannot take the bar exam to become licensed lawyers. That won't be a problem now because the ABA won't have the power to accreditate any law schools. The Education Department produced a 500-page report that concluded the ABA accreditation wing is not sufficiently independent of its profession. So Barker said that accreditation operates like a cartel. When there's no competition, accreditors feel free to inject their own political preferences, their own ideologies into the work that they do. And that has become entirely obvious over the last several years. Now, Melissa Hart is the chair of the ABA's Accreditation Council, and she said that the council complies with federal laws and the Education Department's requirements. Any final decision of the ABA's authority to accreditate law schools is 2 steps and several months away, and the revocation of the authority is not certain. I think it will be revoked because this is, again, something that has already happened in the 2 largest conservative bastions here in the United States. And President Trump and the administration, they do not care for the American Bar Association. The American Bar Association has been behind every effort to withdraw and remove the licenses of any lawyers that stood up for President Trump or stood up for conservative ideals or stood up for the civil rights of people who supported President Trump. So I believe that that will go through, and this is merely the opening salvo. All right. And again, speaking about lawyers, A New York man has just been arrested for allegedly threatening to put a bullet in U.S. Attorney Jeanine Pirro. This New York man was arrested for saying he was going to put a bullet in Judge Jeanine. It's a day ending in Y. So a socialist is threatening to kill someone connected to the Trump administration. All of the threats and violence come from one side only. That's always from the left. And the media pretends that all of the problems in society are on the right. So take a look at the circumstances of this case. This is an unhinged wingbat from Long Island who has just been arrested for threatening to travel to Washington, D.C. to put a bullet in U.S. Attorney Judge Jeanine Pirro's head. His name is Daniel Kretzinger of Hauppauge, New York. You're probably not saying that correctly, but I'm sure there's a New Yorker in the chat who will correct me. He posted 2 vile and menacing videos on X on June 30th, threatening violence against Pirro and further suggesting he may also attempt to assassinate President Trump. And that's according to the criminal complaint filed earlier this month in the U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of New York. Because you're such a lying, despicable piece of ish, Kretzinger allegedly said in a terrifying video, replying to an X post from Pirro's account. I'm specifically targeting you when I come to Washington, D.C. and put a bullet directly between your eyes. See you next Tuesday, except he didn't spell it out like that. Kretzinger, who was shirtless and appeared enraged in the video, then warned, and if Trump keeps up this bullshit, I may kill the president too. And then at that moment, 10 Secret Service agents rushed in from the left and tackled him. I'm going to come to D.C. very effing soon, sweetheart, and I'm going to put a bullet in your effing head, the crazed man said. I love you. I love you, you evil, lying, dirtbag, thieving, effing bee. An arrest warrant was quickly issued for Mr. Kretzinger. That was on August 7th, and he was taken into custody shortly after that on August 11th. He is facing charges of transmitting a threat to injure a person across state lines. That's a violation of federal law, and it carries a maximum prison sentence of 5 years in prison. Now, I got to say, this is not smart, right? This is like supremely dumb. But I have no problem with these people exposing themselves, because obviously the administration is listening. And it's not hard to listen when you reply to Judge Jeanine Pirro's verified account and tell her you love that effing evil bee and you're going to put a bullet in her head. Cool. Okay, we're just going to come and arrest you and we're going to put you on trial because this is so obvious. I mean, we have had attempted assassinations against President Trump. We've had a real assassination of Charlie Kirk. It's obvious that this is not the time of season to play around. You've got all of these like overtly anti-Trump messages that are constantly being broadcast on the mainstream media. Completely insane, TDS suffering, brain-rotted individuals all over social media. And they think that they have the moral high ground. Let's see where that moral high ground gets you when they put you in prison and then your bunkie bends you over in the shower. It's not going to be fun, okay? And I wonder how your progressive ideals will hold up as you find yourself succumbing to the whims of an MS-13 gang member over and over and over again. So just watch yourself. You don't want to bend over when you pick up the soap. You're just going to want to squat straight down with your back against the wall. And good luck to you. Okay, Hauppauge is pronounced Hauppauge. Ravelin is a Long Island native. I knew that there was going to be somebody out there who could do that for me. We're also going to talk about another lawyer. This one is a little bit interesting. A former assistant U.S. attorney and current employee of the Department of Justice, Andrew Hayden, was found dead inside the Edward J. Schwartz Federal Building in San Diego, California, on Wednesday. He was reported missing the day before. Now, he's only 48 years old, but he's a veteran prosecutor, and he was found dead in a vacant office after he was reported missing. I don't believe this was his office, and police do not suspect foul play, but obviously there is no autopsy to report on yet. So the San Diego Tribune have reported that it is suspected that Andrew Hayden took his own life. Out of an abundance of caution, SDPD, the San Diego Police Department investigators, responded to the scene and no foul play is suspected. The official cause and manner of death will be determined by the medical examiner. You know, if they walked in and he was splattered all over the wall, it would be pretty clear how he died. If he did commit suicide, it would make sense that he went into a vacant office rather than messing up his own office. But Assistant U.S. Attorney Andrew Hayden was found dead inside the federal building. Hayden had worked for the U.S. Attorney's Office since 2010, and he twice served as the acting U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of California during various transitions of leadership, once for around 2 months in 2023, and then again for around another 2-month stint in 2025. The Southern District U.S. Attorney Adam Gordon confirmed Hayden's death in a statement yesterday. He said, this was one of the darkest days in our office's history, but there was nothing dark about Andrew Hayden's life. So San Diego police received a report of a missing man late Wednesday evening, and they found him in an office at 880 Front Street shortly thereafter. And the address is that, of course, of the federal building. Now, I looked into some of the stuff that he had worked on. He appears to have been a leftist. It looks like when the Trump administration first took back over for the second term, he had the opportunity to become the U.S. attorney. He declined. There were a whole bunch of lawyers in that particular office that left, and he worked on human trafficking. That was probably the only thing that stood out to me. Maybe some Mexican mafia stuff, some drug stuff. We'll have to wait and see what the official cause of death is and what all the forensics say before I'm willing to just start throwing out conspiracies. But that was really what caught my eye. All right, take a look at this. This is a body cam video of the moment when U.S. Marshals are attempting to raid a home in Mississippi to arrest a convicted sex offender. You've got about 9 officers that are up on this second-story deck, and it appears that those humid Mississippi summers have taken their toll on the wood. The whole deck collapses, and the marshals all go tumbling down. It's kind of crazy. So this happened in the tail end of July. And there were federal and local officers approaching this apartment in this building, and they were looking for 26-year-old Jacob Alexander Munoz. Munoz is a convicted child pornography offender. He was wanted for failing to comply with sex offender registration requirements, and he quit showing up to his parole officer. The officers were participating in Operation Adam's Watch. That was a nationwide U.S. Marshals initiative where they targeted fugitive sex offenders who had failed to register. And the footage shows these 9 heavily armed officers standing outside the second-floor apartment when the deck suddenly gives way beneath their feet. Miraculously, no one was hurt. And I don't think anybody discharged a weapon when they fell, which is, obviously the best thing you can hope for. Hang on. I'm okay. So you can see the point of failure right there. I'm very interested in engineering. So even before it collapses, you can see that there is a support beam right here, which connects the deck to the building that appears to have already slipped out. And there's clearly some cracking in this exterior board right here. Probably and the only thing supporting the deck on the back side is where it's actually connected to the building.
Hold on. Yeah, I'm good.
Absolutely wild. I'm glad those guys are okay. But it should be a lesson to anybody who has a deck that is positioned at anything above like ground level, especially if it's an older deck. This is not totally uncommon. But of course, that would be the last thing on their minds when they were showing up to arrest this pedo. So anyways, I wanted to say I'm glad they're all okay. And I'm glad that they were able to arrest more than 330 fugitive sex offenders. That included 234 who were wanted for on-state failure to register charges, and then another 96 who were wanted for sexual assault or other types of sex-related offenses. We do have more on the subject of sex offenders later in the show, but I wanted to talk about a couple of other things first. I do want to talk about immigration before we get into that. And actually, before we do that, I need to give a big shout out to the first sponsor of the program today. All right, you guys, if you have not yet, do me a favor, please hit the like button. I would sincerely appreciate it. All right, so if you guys are like me, you're probably at a certain age. I tell you guys all the time, 47 years old, and let me tell you, your body does not act the same as it did when you were young. It's not unheard of to feel bloated after a meal. I drink a lot of water. Well, obviously, that's supposed to help, but it doesn't always help. So because I was dealing with my indigestion and stomach issues as I get older, I decided to look into this, and I found somebody by the name of Dr. Josh. And Dr. Josh and I had a conversation. I told him what was going on, and he said something that was kind of shocking. He said that I was showing all the telltale signs of a dehydrated liver. Now, I am a recovering alcoholic, but that was not the thing that I expected to hear. And it's also not exactly what it sounds like. Not dehydrated like I need to drink more water, because I already drink like 4 of these a day. But he told me that that's actually part of the problem. So most people think hydration is just drinking enough water. But this is what Dr. Josh explained to me. Your liver is the main hydration organ of your body. And if the cells in your liver don't get water at the cellular level, then it doesn't matter how much water you end up drinking. You can drink as much water as you possibly can. The water is just going to run right through you. And that definitely happens to me. So your liver gets dehydrated. And when that happens, everything suffers. Your energy goes down. Your digestion slows down. You get bloated. You can hold on to stubborn weight. That's definitely been an issue as I get older. Your skin looks dull. I don't know if that's happening to me. Please tell me not. But you can also feel decades older than you actually are. So plain water on its own is not going to fix this. And there are a lot of electrolyte drinks out there that purport to help in this regard. But most of them, Dr. Josh said, are just sugar and salt, and that is going to completely ignore the problems that your liver is having. So Dr. Josh, who has been practicing for over 25 years, has real medical expertise. He created a drink that is a daily hydration drink called LTV, and it's not just your average everyday electrolyte powder. LTV combines a clinical dose of marine electrolytes. It's also got taurine that helps your cells actually hold on to the water and use it. But then it's also got milk thistle and dandelion root, which is a big support for your liver and its natural detox function. So he told me that LTV has already helped thousands of people and received incredible reviews from customers who seemed to notice it pretty fast. And so that's when I heard enough. I said, okay, I'll go ahead and talk about this. I've got some coming from the website, and as soon as I get it, I will tell you guys exactly how it feels. For the last several weeks, when people begin drinking it, they get real results, and I'm happy to report that I've heard some good things about this. So if you want to give it a shot, you can say goodbye to constant bloating, afternoon crashes, and that dried out foggy feeling. And you can also say hello to real energy, smoother digestion, and a body that feels hydrated for the first time in years. So this is supposed to be very powerful stuff. It tastes great, and you will notice a difference. And you may not get results like this from a regular electrolyte drink or from drinking real water. So pay attention to the way you feel when you try it out. Dr. Josh put his 25 years of experience into LTV to make sure that it actually gives you what it promises, which is cellular hydration, not just making you pee. So if you're ready to hydrate your liver at the cellular level and finally feel the difference in your energy, your digestion, and your waistline, go to drinkltv.com/redpill and get your hands on LTV today. And because you heard about it on my show, it's your lucky day because Dr. Josh is running a special offer. You can get up to 57% off with a free bag of LTV. That is a limited time offer, and the deal is only available through this link for this audience. The link right now is below the video. It's in the description box, so do yourself a favor and click it, and you can give your liver the hydration it's been missing. You can also, of course, use the QR code that you see on screen. But once again, that is drinkltv.com/redpill. Thank you very much, guys. And thank you to Principled Enigma, who says, I appreciate the fact that you are such a clear thinker. I agree with your conclusion on Michael Cohen. Well, thank you, sir. Glad to hear it. Let me also say thank you to Sean Joe for the can. Thank you to Filter Dog for the can. The track is 1.7 miles long for the Freedom 250. You can't make this up. That's awesome. Sean Joe, thank you for 2 more cookies. Ginger, thank you for the cookie. Filter Dog says bar equals British Accreditation Registry. Yes, it does. And then Ginger, thank you for another cookie. I appreciate you. All right. So getting back into the illegals that are being pursued by the government, I thought this one was hilarious. The FBI is currently looking for a man by the name of No Name Given Kamal. That's right. His name is No Name Given Kamal. This is probably one of those instances of these people coming and getting a driver's license or a state ID from Pennsylvania, California, New York, or something like that. But No Name Given Kamal is currently wanted by the FBI, and he has had alleged involvement in a transnational criminal organization known as the Lawrence Bishnoi Organized Crime Group. I have never heard of the Lawrence Bishnoi Organized Crime Group, and that just goes to show you that the government is tracking a lot of these transnational criminal organizations that we've probably never even heard of. So they allegedly engaged in conspiracy to interfere with commerce by extortion, and they are operating in the Central District of California and elsewhere. Now, here is No Name Given Kamal. I don't know what country he's from. Might be from Pakistan, might be from India, something like that. If anybody out there knows the, okay, so over there on YouTube, it's because you're not on Rumble. So that's why you would need to go to the link that I read off. Tell you what I'll do. I will go copy and paste. There you go. drinkltv.com/redpill for anybody who's not on Rumble. There you go. No Name Given Kamal. No Name Given Kamal. You can't make this stuff up. All right. Now, we also have another episode of Medicaid Millions coming from Luke Rosiak. This one is entitled The Millionaire Welfare Kings Behind a Quality Medicaid Empire. Now, in this instance, we've got a couple of people who actually went to jail. This is taking place in Columbus, Ohio. All right, so go back with me to 2008. The AmVets post number 89. They sold their lodge on Westerville Road in Ohio's capital city of Columbus to a Somali. So this is a location that was once a home for Americans who sacrificed for their country. But soon it would be housing dozens of trucking and Medicaid businesses. Isn't that interesting? Now, the owner of the AmVets post number 89 is now Ali Jama. Now, here's the thing. Ali Jama went to prison for defrauding the government. Probably could have guessed that. You probably said it before it even came out of my mouth. But yes, Ali Jama went to prison for defrauding the government. And there was an examination of businesses in the area where Ali Jama was working. And it seems that his empire might have simply just been taken over by some of his associates. What you have is a whole host of other African migrants who amassed riches at a shocking scale through billing poverty programs. So in this installation, where Daily Wire and Luke Rosiak did this investigation into Medicaid home health, they have found the convoluted networks that have been used to move money and assets between Somalis, which of course makes it difficult to stop, sometimes makes it difficult to identify the abuse, and turns enforcement into a game of whack-a-mole. But this is why it's so important that we continue to drive home that this stuff is happening. This is not an isolated circumstance. This is the culture of these particular groups of migrants when they come here to the United States. I think that it's more often than not that these people come here with the intention of defrauding the government and the taxpayers of the United States than it is they come here to just simply live the American dream. I would go so far as to say maybe 90 to 95% of these migrants come here with the express intention of ripping us off. Now, in January of 2018, one of the businesses owned by Ali Jama, it's a Medicaid business called Alpha Star Healthcare. They got busted. They were defrauding medical programs of hundreds of thousands of dollars. And even at the same time as he was getting rich off of taxpayer money, he was also filing tax returns. And in those tax returns, he claimed that he made no money, which resulted in a net loss to the American Treasury of at least $700,000. That is a pair of balls right there. Let me tell you. Stealing as much money as he did, millions of dollars, and then still filing your taxes and claiming that you didn't actually make any money. Now, here's his defense. The defense was that he was a polygamist, which is also against the law. He was married to multiple women, and he was taking his money, and then he was sending it back home to Somalia. And when they presented this defense in court, his lawyer told the judge, well, Your Honor, almost every penny he earns, he sends to his families because he's got more than one, because he's a polygamist. So a year later, in February 2019, the judge, of course, was unmoved. Mr. Jama was sentenced to 18 months in prison. He got out in May of 2020, which is not 18 months. You probably can do the math. Anyways, Jama owed restitution, but he told the government, I'm broke. I have no money. So on December 10th of 2020, prosecutors wrote that he failed to comply with the special conditions of supervised release by not making consistent monthly restitution payments, having only made 4 payments of $200 since May when he was released. Now, his lawyer replied to the government and said that DOJ, the defendant, works as a dispatcher at a trucking company. Isn't that interesting? A dispatcher at a trucking company. He's got very limited resources. So he was let off of supervised release early rather than keeping him on. Thank you, Cly. I got it about 20 minutes ago. He was let off supervised release, work release early, and he no longer had to worry about his parole. Now, if bank accounts in Jama's name said 0, you could not say the same about his neighbors and close associates, because it would appear that despite coming into the United States as refugees from one of the poorest countries in the world, they are now some of the richest people in Ohio, if not the United States. The amount of money that these people have, the people who are friends and family members of Mr. Jama, it raises some uncomfortable questions. Whether or not Jama was really just a pawn in a massive scheme that can easily adapt and move into the hands of another migrant scammer, or if the prosecution completely missed just how powerful he was. And clearly, this guy is still part of the same criminal scheme that he was involved in before. So, 3 doors down from Mr. Jama, and funny, this is so ironic, he lives on Morality Drive. This is a middle-class neighborhood in Ohio, but 3 doors down from Mr. Jama on Morality Drive is another man by the name of Omar Saeed Omar. I don't know if that's his real name, but that's the name he got on his ID. He is the owner of 6 buildings. One of those buildings encompasses 9 Medicaid businesses that collectively billed the government nearly $20 million, and that's according to government records. Now, Omar was the owner also of Serenity Home Healthcare. Separately, they billed $33 million to taxpayers in recent years. At certain times, they were billing the government over $600,000 a month. Then down the block in the other direction, again on Morality Drive, is Ahmed Duali. He worked as Serenity Home Healthcare's administrative assistant, and separately also he owns 11 properties in Columbus. Duale told the Daily Wire over the phone that he moved to Wisconsin to create a Medicaid group home called Serenity Place, and that Omar sold that business to new management. But a building owned by Omar is the headquarters of Serenity Healthcare Plus, and they list their business hours as 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. However, when Luke Rosiak showed up during business hours, there was a notice from the fire marshals that they had repeatedly found this business vacant. So it's not really a real business. Now, the home that Jama lives in on Morality Drive was actually owned by Abdullah Qadir Mohammed. He also ran a Medicaid firm at the former Veterans Hall, and he now runs a daycare in a building that's owned by another man by the name of Ali Gell, who was also once arrested for allegedly threatening to kill a woman. That charge was dropped for insufficient evidence, probably because the woman refused to testify. That's just a guess. And according to property records, Mohammed got that home for free from the Department of Housing and Urban Development. And then he later transferred that free house to an LLC that he co-controls with somebody else who runs a firm called Care Home Health Care LLC in another building that Gell owns. Man, you know, it's bad enough when these dirty, rotten immigrants are billing the federal government $600,000 a month fraudulently. But then we're also giving them free buildings. We're giving them free homes and free office buildings. Anybody in my audience, any Americans ever had an opportunity to get a free building or a free house from any government agency? I'm going to guess right off the bat that the answer is no. Just going to guess that it's no. But on the off chance that it's a yes, I'd like to hear about it. Filthy pigs. God, that pisses me off. So, the Veterans Hall is now owned by another group, Central Ohio Investment Properties, LLC. And it was created in 2018 by Mr. Gell, but it also consists of numerous people that are tied directly to Jama. The paperwork for the LLC was sent to Jama himself, which, according to the Secretary of State's office, means that Jama's online login was the one actually used to submit the forms. So even though he's not listed as the owner, he was the one who was filing the paperwork. Okay. So the real estate's LLC address is the same as Accurate Home Healthcare, which is another Medicaid firm, also founded by Jama, that is still operational, and it billed taxpayers $10.6 million in recent years. That included things like home visits. There was a state audit that found those home visits could not have occurred. Accurate Home Healthcare CEO Abdweli Shaikhdin is a partner in the Veteran Hall's holding company. My goodness, this is so incestuous. You've got another partner, Osman M. Isa. Osman M. Isa registered to vote using Jama's address and incorporated Pacific Home Health Services, LLC, which also billed Medicaid $8.1 million, according to spending records. And in 2006, Isa was charged with a fraud offense, but he only paid a fine. Blue patches, this is Ohio. This is all in Columbus. So the final partner is Abdurazak Bolshale. That person is listed as running a home health firm out of an apartment, and he's also co-owners of another real estate LLC along with Ahmed Duale, who is Jama's neighbor. So some of the participants used the same lawyer to form their various LLCs. That lawyer appears to be Dwight Hurd. Dwight, interesting character himself. He was at one time convicted of felony fraud before that conviction was overturned on a technicality before the state Supreme Court. Good on you, Mr. Hurd. So here is Ali Gell right here. Ali Gell, he's the largest Medicaid magnate of the Columbus area, apparently. He's got 14 properties that he owns. That's worth $4 million. One of those properties houses 65 Medicaid companies. I'm sure each one of them is billing millions, if not tens of millions of dollars to Medicaid every year. Some of the businesses or buildings that he owns contain daycares. He has created 16 companies himself. which include Medicaid, import-export, learning centers, etc. He's been arrested for allegedly threatening to kill a woman. He does have tax debts, and he also took over assets after Ali Jama was arrested for Medicaid fraud. So, with Jama sidelined by his convictions, he couldn't continue to do the things that he was doing before. So, it kind of appears that Mr. Ali Gel became the new Medicaid magnate of the Midwest. He took over for Mr. Jama after Mr. Jama became a convicted felon. So, Gel has a tax lien against him for failing to pay. But at the same time, he owns or co-owns at least 14 properties in Columbus, again, valued at over $4 million. That is real estate, which is probably very lucrative. Most notable of those properties is that two-story building, which is allegedly the home of 65 different companies registered, each and every one, to bill Medicaid. Collectively, they have billed $35 million in just the last couple of years. The building is located at 2021 East Dublin Granville Road in Columbus. Might as well be called Gel's Medicaid Emporium. Tenants take advantage of Ohio's personal services expansion of the federal program that allows non-medical professionals to bill the government for cooking and cleaning in private residences. Often it's their own, since the workers can simply be the relatives of elderly people enrolled in that program. Now, when the Daily Wire visited that property, there was a directory in the building's lobby. It listed 28 home health care companies. Sitting on top were 2 ID cards, both for Somali men. There was a paper ID that expired 20 years ago and a Nebraska commercial driver's license issued to an Ali Abdi with the birth date of January 1st. That's pretty common among Somalis because their birthday isn't known. They basically come from the dirt lands and they aren't given that sort of information when they come. Or if they do, they don't want the government knowing what their real birth date is. Now, some of the Medicaid companies in the Emporium are actually owned by Gel. Others appear to be owned by people who have ties to him. You've also got a cab driver with whom he shared an apartment in California 20 years ago to a woman that he once sold a house to. And the Medicaid building that he was owning, it's purchased for $2.1 million in a partnership between Gel and Ahmed Farah Mohammed, who also, by the way, owns one of the companies inside that building, Accessible Home Healthcare LLC. And Accessible Home Healthcare was the doing business as name of Jama and Salub Home Healthcare LLC. That's the one that was busted back in 2013 for misappropriating $700,000 from Medicaid. So while he was getting rich, ripping off Medicaid, he was also having liens placed against it every single year for not paying the taxes. But then in 2021, the Ohio Department of Taxation entered a $1.4 million judgment against it so that they could try and collect it. In 2024, Mohammed, Jama, and Salub's co-landlord incorporated another company by the same name. The one that owed money to the government operated out of Suite 185, and now the new firm operates out of Suite 188, and there is no Suite 185. These people are slippery. One of the owners of Jama and Salub, meanwhile, is listed as president of a different home health care company, also founded by Mr. Gel. Gel has personally registered at least 16 for-profit companies, including A+ Academic Achievement LLC and AAG Import and Export Company. Now here you can see the IDs. Why are those IDs just sitting up there? That is so weird. All right, but wait, there's more. Because Gel and the Medicaid Emporium also demonstrate how home healthcare owners aren't often professionals who have dedicated their careers to healthcare, but merely rather opportunists who open businesses in numerous fields, with the commonality typically being that they either bill the government or they enable the transfer of money overseas. So the tenants of the Medicaid Emporium that don't bill Medicaid are mainly social services nonprofits. They extract large sums of money from the government while being run by the exact same cast of characters. In Suite 110, as an example, you've got a nonprofit called Our Helpers, which has received $1.9 million in grants. That includes $279,000 from the state of Ohio. They share a suite with both a home health care company and another group called Muslim Youth Revival. Our Helpers lists Hawa Farah, who public records suggest is Gel's wife, as their treasurer. The organization says it exists to address the unique struggles facing the Somali immigrant youth in terms of drug abuse, violence, extremism, etc., by creating a basketball program. At this point, it seems like the biggest problem these Somalis have is how in the hell they're going to spend all this money. Suite 161 contains the Somali American Museum that was funded by a grant from the City Arts Council. It's a fluorescent lit room with pictures of the presidents of Somalia and a portrait of Representative Ilhan Omar. You've got another nonprofit called Global Social Services. They got paid $2.6 million from the state of Ohio using the Emporium's address. They call itself a network that brings donors, and they spell donors wrong, DONERS, closer to the most needed of the society. The only events listed on their website are Lorem Ipsum, which is the pseudo-Latin phrase used as a placeholder on websites that have not fully been built yet. So there are no events that they've ever actually held. Gel is not just the landlord to that nonprofit. He is a business partner with its founder, Abdinasar A. Omar, and together the two of them make up A&A Property Management, LLC. They own a different building that receives rent from a taxpayer-funded Leering Center. A&A follows a pattern of moving on paper ownership between family members and friends. The real estate venture was registered first to Gel's apparent brother, Abdul Wahab Gel, and then to him, Gel, his brother, is spelled differently, actually. And then you've got this website for Global Social Services. Take a look at this. There is apparently this animated man, Mission Vision, which is vision spelled incorrectly. Who are we? And there is like an AI chatbot here. Hello, welcome to Global Social Services. I am Global Social Services. What is your name? A network that brings donors closer to the most needed in society. Absolutely insane. Hold on. I'm going to see if we can go to this website and chat with this bot. Global Social Services Columbus. Aha. Here is their website. Oh my God, you can click for sound.
Hello, welcome to Global Social Services, a network that brings donors closer to the most needed of the society. We're proud to provide great services such as community engagement, counseling, and workforce. Thanks for visiting our site.
Thank you for visiting us. We will look forward to seeing you. I am Ali. Oh my God, it's going to write back. Nice to meet you. I am Ali. Would you like to share with us your email so we can contact you? No. No problem. You can call us. Office hours. Okay, everybody get your pens. 614-316-6656. Once again, that is 614-316-6656. I was hoping that I would be able to have a conversation with this chatbot and tell him that I was an at-risk Somali youth, but apparently that won't work. The name Ali was maybe what gave me away. Anyways, you can call them during business hours, and I would imagine that would probably be before 5 p.m., but I doubt they're going to answer. 614-316-6656. Thank you, Claire Cat. Thank you for that. Bonkers. Absolutely bonkers. Okay, so continuing. Let's talk about their daycares, because elsewhere in Columbus, Gel has 2 properties occupied by locations of Quality Adult Daycare Center, LLC. That's on Woodland Avenue and West Broad Street. An Ohio government website notes that the taxpayer-funded facility primarily serves older Somali adults. Let's see. Jeff Forrest, sir, thank you very much for the Rumble Wallet donation. Did you see Ed Martin's video on restoring Second Amendment rights to convicted felons? I'm so excited. It describes my situation exactly. I did see that. And that was what I believe his I should have mentioned that, but that's what I believe his essay was about when he was talking about, the power of forgiveness and stuff. So, yes, there are a lot of people out there who committed non-violent felonies, did something maybe when they were young and they had their Second Amendments and even their voting rights taken away. So, yeah, I am with you on that. Good for you, Jeff. That's awesome. BDR 1776, part 1. This makes me sick. My aunt died 5 years ago, and we took over her handicapped son. My mom moved back from Florida to live with this house full-time, and I go up and help. We wanted to sell the house and add on to mine so we could live together, and the state said, we faint or they will attach my house after he dies, and these illegals get away with this shit. Yes, it is pretty horrific, the things that people like these migrants are allowed to get away with, and people like you and I, we are held to a very different standard. So, on paper, Gell does not own this business. He owns the buildings, not the business. The daycare LLC was registered first to Gell's wife and then to his brother. One of the quality adult daycare locations shares their building with another child care center, Woodland Child Care Center. In the records for the state of Ohio, the two facilities have got different owners, but they share the same logo style. They also have a single graphical banner that covers all their windows. It's a choice that deprives any patients inside of natural light, and most importantly, it conceals from the public whether or not any people are actually inside. The child care center is registered to Abdul Qadir Hassan Mohammed. He's the roommate of Ali Jama, who, of course, ran his own Medicaid company in the Veterans Hall, and Ali Mohammed Sheikh. That pair also owns a Medicaid company in Gell's Emporium, which we just left. There was a number belonging to an Abdul Qadir Mohammed that Luke Rosiak called, and he said he's not the same person, but also a detective had recently come to his house looking for the other one. Anyways, Gell also owns another building at 4523 Cleveland Avenue, and it just so happens to house the Creator Children's Center. A state inspection found it had failed to submit background checks on their employees. It also failed to keep attendance records and had equipment stained with blood or bodily fluids. That daycare is run by Sarah Ogden, whose husband David runs 3 Medicaid firms that have been paid millions. Previously, the daycare building housed Maxim Therapy LLC, which is a company registered once again to Gell's brother. Sarah and David Ogden, they sound European. I'd like to, let's look up Sarah and David Ogden. Have they started bringing the whites in on their scams? Sarah Ogden, Columbus. Well, I'm not exactly certain which. There seems to be a number of Sarah Ogdens in. I should probably search for the name of the Creator Children's Center. Sarah Ogden, Creator Children's Center, Columbus. Well, we've got the listing here. Only the best staff are hired. From the moment we walked in, we felt the warm, welcoming atmosphere. This place is great for kids. They do have an Instagram. But, of course, there's no pictures of the actual business. They do have a website. Let's check out their website. It doesn't work. Let's go to the archive and see if anybody had ever archived this before. The website may have never actually worked. Sue Castellano says, I own a 204-year-old historically registered home. I must use a historical contractor to do the work. I can't find any grant money. I get so angry when I hear about these immigrants stealing money from the government. I have heard of other people in your situation before. I heard of a situation, I want to say it was up in Jacksonville. This couple had bought a home, and their intention was to gut it and then redo it because it had a bunch of problems and it was not fit to live in. And so when they bought it and then they started doing work, their bitch ass neighbor called the city on them and basically ratted them out and said, these people are going to destroy this historical home. You know, they actually may have been planning to tear it down and then rebuild a new house. I think that was it because it was too far gone. And so the city basically stepped in and said, oh, somebody thinks this home is historical, so we're going to have to register it and you'll never be able to tear it down. And basically nobody will ever be able to live in it. I'm sorry to hear that, Sue. That is horrible. Thank you to The Floor Is Yours, who says, I've been a member of NA for 36 and a half years. And that's my clean time in New York City. Good for you, man. I've been a vegan since 2000 and been eating one meal a day since 2018. And I've been doing a 48-hour water fast once a month for the last 3 years that supports the liver. Hop Hog, Long Island, you have to have a New Yorker say it for you so you can hear how you say it. You can't read it off a piece of paper to get the proper sound and pronunciation. I probably think that you are correct. Good job in your sober time, man. I have 8 years myself and coming up on 9, but of course, we don't count the time that isn't ours yet. Sean Joe, thank you for the can. Darla says, thanks again, Zach and Lisa, for giving us your time and energy. Always great news reporting. I just wish it was better times to be reporting on. We the people are worn out. Let's get this done. I am right there with you. I am definitely tired, boss, but at the same time, I am excited about the things that I see happening. We can't fix things. I've said this for years. We can't fix things unless we can identify them. All of these things that we report on, such as these Somali scammers, it's not new. It's been happening for years. It's just nobody was paying attention. Either that or nobody was willing to speak about it because they were worried about being called racist or some other kind of ist or phobe or something like that. So anyways, I would like to know about Sarah and David Ogden. I wish I'll have to do some more digging on them. Sarah and David Ogden. Sarah and David Ogden, Ohio. There's a David Ogden in Willoughby, Ohio. I don't want to pull up the wrong person. There's a Sarah Ogden who is a magistrate of the Stark County Probate Court. Oh, shit. I wonder if that's her. Okay. Anyways, I will do an offline dig on that one. So the daycare run by Sarah, her husband David, runs the 3 Medicaid firms. They get paid out millions. The daycare building had previously housed Maxim Therapy, LLC. That is a company registered to Gail's brother. And then you've got the transportation network where they have financial vehicles that get used to transfer ownership between Somalis that have been decades in the making. You've got Somali names, which are all probably some variation of the real thing. It's labyrinthine in nature. It makes it virtually impossible for the government to know exactly where the money is going because they will intentionally spell them wrong. They will flip their names around. They'll just use fake names. They'll throw a middle name in there. In 2003, you had a company called African Auto Sale that was incorporated at 1686 East Hudson Avenue by Ali Ahmed Mohammed. That's according to court records. It is allegedly an alias of Mr. Gell. And Ahmed Saloob Mohammed, the owner of the home care company that was later busted. And then later, Gell would be added as a new registered agent, even though he was the same person and he was using a different name. So in 2006, they adopted the doing business as name of Linden Transportation, writing that their line of work was medical transportation. That was a trade name, not the official LLC name, because, of course, it makes it more confusing. And there was a different person named Isa Saloob Mohammed, maybe the brother of the other Saloob. And then he created an actual LLC called Linden Transportation LLC at the same address. So ISA shows how this convoluted Somali network spans from Columbus to Minneapolis, and Somalis disclosed $130 million in bulk cash on flights going from Columbus to Minneapolis or Atlanta between 2023 and 2025, and then all of that money ends up going overseas largely. So this guy has been affiliated with a daycare, a feeding site, a home health care company, all of them in Ohio. He once had a $32,000 federal tax lien, and he eventually moved to Minnesota, where he opened up more businesses. A Plus Healthcare LLC, they billed Medicaid $35,000 in a single month, and then he disappeared. Now, Gell denied knowing Ali Jama. He declined to answer any questions for this story. He called the request harassment. That's what they always do. And then he said he would call the police on Luke Rosiak. So instead of following our early reporting in this services, law enforcement suspended a firm in the Emporium, Comfort and Care Home Health. Its proprietor, Vina Ugwu, has 6 registered homes in her name. And of course, this is just one more article in a long line. We are now on part 6 of Medicaid Millions. So if you want to get angry, watch my other coverage on that or go through and read them yourself. All right. So now let's talk about H-1B, because H-1B, although we are frustrated with the state of the current visa industry, it is changing, and it is changing significantly. Thank you to Sean Joe for the cookie, and thank you to Brewbark for the cookie. Did you see the article about the Italian bank that accepts cheese as collateral for loans? I didn't see the article, but I showed a video about it the other day on the show. Somebody, it might have been you actually, had mentioned it in the chat, and so I showed the article about it, and in Italy, you've got all of these artisan cheesemakers who are making Parmesan. And because the Parmesan doesn't mature for, I think it's like 3 to 6 years or something like that, they make the cheese, they give it to the bank, and then the bank holds it in vaults. And then the bank gives the cheesemakers money so that they can make more cheese. And so they are basically just like trading the cheese in for the money. And then they get the cheese, and then they sell it. And then they just keep making more cheese. It's pretty sweet. So anyways, every single year, you've got roughly 30,000 low-skilled migrants who cheat their way into the H-1B program. And they do this so they can get work visas and jobs from Americans. And we know that there is a massive amount of fraud in the H-1B system. The reason that this article was written is because an Indian investor, someone ostensibly who takes part in the H-1B system, is also admitting that there is a massive problem with fraud in the H-1B system. He said, see, what happens is with every government program, there's also corruption. No shit, Sherlock. First of all, you have people faking their resumes. So you have these body shops. These are white-collar staffing companies that the administration is currently going after. They bring people in. It's cheap labor. That's a fact. It happens. Probably, he estimates 25% of the people who come in on H-1Bs fall into this fraudulent category. I would suggest it's probably a lot more than 25%. But even 25% is a high percentage. You've got, on average, 120,000 H-1Bs who arrive in the United States every single year. So 25% is still a lot. Now, there are roughly 750,000 H-1Bs and spouses currently in the United States. That means 750,000 people who are taking jobs from Americans. So the estimate of 20 to 25% suggests that roughly 170,000 of these Indian H-1B holders used fraud to gain these jobs and take them from Americans. And as we have spoken about numerous times before, because of the presence of these H-1B visa holders, they get paid lower wages. That pushes down the wages of the natural-born population. If we want to compete against these Indians coming here to the United States, roughly a million every single year with temporary visas, they get allowed to stay, and then they can apply for green cards. And as we've shown, they can swap from one type of visa to another. The administration is also currently addressing that as well. But the people who are against H-1Bs wanted to stop because this is quite obviously a detriment to the United States and to the people that live here. There is also, of course, the issue of all of these people committing different types of fraud when they get here. Let me first, before we get into some of those fraudulent examples, let me go through this right here. This is an example of how someone could use fraud to gain access to the H-1B system. So this was written by a user on Reddit. Amazon interview fraud. I'm disgusted. One of my friends recently received an offer from Amazon for an SDE role, and they are getting paid $250,000 because they cheated in this interview. So he used AI tools in his OA. I don't know what OA means. More disgustingly, he used remote dubbing. So I guess that there are Indian consultancies, and apparently they offer cheating services for people when they're going in for an interview. So what they do is they put a microphone and a speaker next to their laptop. And then when someone on the other end in India talks and answers the questions for the interview, the candidate merely lip syncs. So they would have to be pretty good. I've actually seen people getting caught doing this before because it seemed like it would be pretty obvious. But apparently they can do it convincingly enough so that they don't always get caught. Anyways, the person who wrote this post says, I am absolutely horrified and disgusted listening to how brazen these people got. My friend in question has absolutely no clue about coding. He doesn't even know the very basics of programming and not a single programming language. So you might ask the question, how is it that this guy is going to get paid $250,000 a year to do this job for Amazon? Well, he's hiring someone in India, and he is paying them $20,000 who is going to do this job full time while he collects a paycheck. And that's it. So Cockroach Exposer writes, this is exactly what H-1B, 4H-EAD, L2 opt people are doing. They fake experience and they proxy out the interviews. And then once they get the job, they give the actual work to someone in India. They pay them $600 to $700 a month. They earn the $200,000 to $250,000 a year in American money. And then with that job and that money, they can then marry a girl in India. That girl is going to bring in a huge dowry, $200,000 to $1 million. Then, of course, that wife comes on the spouse visa, which is the H4EAD, L2, or something else. And then she does the same thing, fakes the interview, has a proxy answer the questions for her, gets a job, makes a fantastic amount of money. They're both pulling in now $500,000 a year, and they are paying some schmuck back in India to do their job for a lot less money. And then, of course, they have the kids, and the kids they spit out automatically get birthright citizenship. So this is effing us 6 ways till Sunday in so many different ways. But wonderful news in relation to at least one of these types of visas, the opt visa. We've talked about this before. This is the optional practical training visa. So this is for people to get a job while they're in school, basically early vocational training on the job. But the president and the Office of Regulatory Affairs for the Department of Labor has just proposed a $100,000 opt visa fee. So the DHS just sent this proposed rule entitled Optional Practical Training Fees to the White House. They are reviewing it. The government classifies it as economically significant. Bloomberg, which of course is total deep state rag, has reported that DHS is considering this $100,000 fee for the opt visas. That program allows hundreds of thousands of foreign graduates to stay working in the United States. Now, it's not a rule yet, but it sounds like it's going to be very, very soon. This would completely change the landscape and the economics of the opt visa, STEM visa, that sort of thing. Now, take a look at this. A couple of Indian scammers by the name of Prashant Gajera and Daraben Davadia. They were just convicted of carrying out a PayPal fraud scheme. Exactly what you think of when you get a call from an Indian on your phone. They tell you that they're from PayPal or they're from Amazon and somebody ordered an iPhone 18 Pro on your account, that sort of thing. I'm sure everybody here has gotten a call like that. They were only here in the United States for a couple of weeks, and as soon as they got here, they started committing fraud against U.S. citizens. Both of them were given a 5-year suspended prison sentence, and I believe that they are going to be deported. I don't know what type of visa they are here on, but they are not citizens of the United States. Now, take a look at this. This is the state of Indian affairs in the United States from the perspective of an Indian. And he says, returned from the USA recently. My take on H-1B situation and why Americans hate Indians taking up jobs there. So he writes, I used to work at Amazon USA and I returned last month. One of the reasons was the toxic behavior of my Indian managers. They exploit employees on visas. They know how complicated and vulnerable the situation is since they themselves went through it. Honestly, I don't think Trump's reasoning is entirely wrong. There are so many Indians in higher positions who mainly hire other Indians. And why? because they can abuse them and their visa status. They avoid hiring Americans because they know they can't push them around to work 24/7, and Americans won't hesitate to sue if boundaries are crossed. Another example is Walmart, which is filled with Telugu managers and employees. The only real hiring criteria seems to be, are you Telugu? And then you'll get the job. Same with Gujaratis at Intel, where they prefer only hiring Gujaratis. My classmates from uni used to go play cricket with Intel employees to secure internships. Obviously, Americans will be pissed if they see this kind of favoritism. They're not stupid. The new H-1B rule will definitely reduce the number of these types of employees and managers. And I'm happy at least everyone saw how fragile H-1B situation is this weekend, and it's not as glorious as it seems from the outside. Note, I'm not saying don't go. It's definitely a good experience living in a first world country. And I'm also not saying everyone is like this. I've gotten some really good opportunities to interview, and I'll admit I regret messing a few of them up, but life happens. My decision to move back was not entirely because of these issues. It was a personal choice. I just felt I couldn't be on two boats at once, especially when those boats were 24 hours apart by flight and came with visa complications. So I think that's a fairly astute breakdown of exactly what's happening. And it also points to the utter decline of the American tech industry. We've shown before, all of these major tech companies have essentially been taken over at the executive level by Indians who have emigrated here. And they have basically begun the process of weeding out Americans and replacing all their employees with Indians. And as a result, take a look at Apple. Okay, Apple for years was one of the tightest security operations in the world. Every single year, without fail, they would have new iPhones come out and a bunch of new products. As soon as they put their manufacturing, took it out of China, and they moved it into India, you know what happened? All of their products leaked because the people in India working for them had absolutely zero moral qualms about stealing and leaking that information. They probably got paid for it. All right. It's a different culture. And not to mention the fact that in India, they have the caste system. And so if you are a higher caste, then it's totally permissible for you to look down on people in the lower caste and to take advantage of them and treat them like shit. And unfortunately, some of that has transferred over here to the United States. Now, here is something that absolutely needs to be on the minds of every person. As much as the administration is trying to lock down the immigrations and visa system, Congress right now is trying to fast track the PERM green card labor certifications. They want to make it 30 days instead of 60 days. PERM is supposed to establish that there are no qualified available U.S. workers for the job. So that means that rather than taking 60 days to determine that there are no American workers, they want to shorten that length of time and make it 30 days, which means that it is less likely that they will come across an American who could do the job instead of the green card holder. So before we give employers a 30-day fast lane, we should be requiring jobs to be posted publicly. We should require disclosure of every American who applied. We should require interviews of qualified U.S. applicants. We should require written reasons for their rejection, and the results should also be audited. If an employer truly could not find an American worker, it shouldn't be that controversial for them to prove it. Now, it is Glenn Grothman, who is the representative for Wisconsin's 6th district, who is looking to push this. This is ostensibly to reduce the backlog on green cards. But Glenn, we don't need to be approving more green cards. We need to be approving fewer green cards. So if anybody here lives in Wisconsin, I would suggest making a calm and sensible call to Mr. Grothman's office and letting him know that we don't need more immigrants here. We need less, and we need more jobs for Americans. All right. I got to pop out this. Okay, Principal Enigma says, I got a call during your broadcast from the lady with Brightcore. Could that have been a scam, or does Brightcore actually do that? I have no idea. I mean, yeah, I have no idea, honestly. If you call back, yeah, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, you should be pretty easy to figure out whether or not it's actually her or whether it's actually them. I doubt it's actually Kim. It's probably going to be some other representative, but tell them that you'd love to see them back on my show. All right. So here is, of course, another tragic tale of an immigrant coming to the United States and then killing an American. This was in Mississippi. The Mississippi Highway Patrol is investigating a deadly crash on Interstate 20 in Hinds County as of yesterday. At approximately 1:46 p.m., so full daylight, the Mississippi Highway Patrol responded to reports of a crash involving an 18-wheeler and a pedestrian on I-20 West near the 29-mile marker. According to MHP officials, 26-year-old Subay Singh of Fresno, California, was driving westbound in a 2021 Freightliner when 36-year-old Dedrick Garrett of Terry, Mississippi, exited his 2016 Honda CRV and was struck by the Freightliner. Garrett sustained fatal injuries in the crash and was pronounced deceased at the scene. Singh did not have any injuries. This is an active and ongoing investigation, and no further information is available at this time.
Secure private podcasts.
Got to get past this commercial.
And a man is hit and killed by an 18-wheeler in Hinds County after getting out on Interstate 20. The Mississippi Highway Patrol says it happened this afternoon on I-20 West near Bolton. State troopers say Dedrick Garrett of Terry got out of his SUV for some reason on I-20. He was then hit by the 18-wheeler. Garrett died at the scene. The 18-wheeler driver was not hurt. MHP is continuing to investigate the circumstances that is surrounding this crash.
Tragic. Absolutely tragic. All right. Wes Randall over on YouTube. I don't know if you're responding to somebody in the chat or if you're responding to something that I say. I don't think it would be to something that I said. But yeah, we're not talking about Black Americans. We are talking about migrants who came here specifically to defraud the United States. All right. Here is another cautious tale about Indian immigrants who came to the United States, perhaps with less training and knowledge than they purported to have. So this is a real story about a woman who went into the hospital to get a knee replacement. And what's unfortunate is that Glenda Dorton, instead of being administered the correct anesthesia, she was given potassium, and now she is paralyzed from the chest down. So the CEO of this hospital was born and trained in India. She earned her medical degree, MBBS, from Seth GS Medical College and King Edward Memorial Hospital in Mumbai. At least that's what it says on her resume. And then her boss, the system CEO, was also born in India. We don't know yet about the anesthesiologist or the pharmacist who apparently mixed the wrong drugs. But regardless, there is a problem with the way that Miss Dorton received the medication. The use of locally compounded drugs in this particular instance are 100% against the known standard. The only thing that the hospital is supposed to use are single-use ampules with the drug itself in its pure form as it's already been mixed, because that has original labeling and it ensures that something will not get mixed in incorrectly. So in order to protect each other, the CEO and the doctor, or the CEO of the hospital system and then the hospital system itself have blamed the pharmacy. But because this is an ongoing investigation, we don't know exactly what happened. All we can say is that this woman went in for a knee replacement and now she is paralyzed from the neck down, and she won't need that knee replacement because she will never work again. She will never walk again, probably never work again either. Now, what's also interesting is that MIT economists are now saying that the H-1B program also cripples the schooling system for children in K through 12. So this visa program is draining the incentive for complacent politicians to fix the school system here in the United States. Of course, you know who goes to public schools? Regular, average, everyday Americans of all races. And the educated elite have given up on the education of Americans because they send their children to private schools, or they can afford to have private tutors. And because they think that these H-1B holders are going to fill the gap where education has failed American citizens. So they can just import the skills that Americans are not being taught as they make their way through school. I don't have to tell you guys, in schools, public schools all around the country, we've got a real issue with American children, American high school graduates, unable to read, unable to perform basic arithmetic, unable to even demonstrate basic life skills that will be necessary when they make their way out into the world. And of course, that sets them up for ultimate failure. Doesn't matter if they are working in any type of job. Okay, you need all of those basic skills and pieces of education, but they're bringing in nurses, they're bringing in doctors, they're bringing in programmers. And the problem is that Americans are not being given the basic educational requirements to rise up to those positions themselves. And even worse yet, the ones who do are finding themselves competing with H-1B visa holders who are getting who are more economically viable for the companies to hire, because they can hire more of them for the cost that it would normally be to hire an American citizen. So the ramifications of H-1B find themselves making their way all throughout the entirety of American society, and it affects people across all 50 states, all income brackets, unless, of course, you are among the very, very wealthy. Now, let's show you a couple of instances of H-1B fraud, likely because what you are looking at here is a home listing on Zillow. This is a residential home in Frisco, Texas. We've spoken about Frisco, Texas before. There is a large Indian population of H-1B visa holders and immigrants that have moved there. They've essentially taken over the entire town. But this is a 2,700 square foot home. And wouldn't you know it, listed at this home are 66 H-1B visa holders who allegedly work inside this 2,700 square foot home. And you can see that evidenced right here from the paperwork provided by the U.S. government. This, to me, does not appear to be a legitimate business. But wait, there's more. Here's another one in Pennsylvania, Kennett Square, Pennsylvania. This is a 1,400 square foot condo where apparently 23 plant scientists and agricultural inspectors on H-1B status also work out of. So I think that the message here is pretty clear that it's not only one state. The issue with H-1B fraud is taking place in probably every state all around the country to varying degrees. Down here in Florida, where I live, there is a relatively small population of H-1B visa holders that are here. There are some, but it's not anywhere near what you see in Texas. Now, also, interestingly enough, I think directly connected to those homes that I just showed you, this is an account on X that has been actively working to expose these H-1B fraudsters. And she types out, "It turns out I may be directly responsible for the forced removal of 200 to 300 Indians in Texas. Also, the prevention of hundreds more. We got to move those numbers up. My goal is 250,000. Now, the Department of Deportations, which is the account that had posted those two homes, they reply and say Patriot. And apparently, the Department of Deportations and this other account are part of a group that have been drilling down on the information for these visa holders and their companies. And there was one time where I showed you a site visit where they had gone to one of these homes and they were attempting to verify that these dozens of H-1B holders were working in this home, and they weren't. It was all fraudulent. This is also part of the same network that I told you about before, where these H-1B holders are coming here to the United States, they're buying a home, and then they're buying a second home, and then they are renting out that home to additional H-1B visa holders when they get here. You can't do that when you're a H-1B visa holder. You can't have multiple sources of income. You're only legally allowed through the conditions of your visa to have that one job. So the same goes for making money on social media, having side gigs, owning a bakery, owning another business that is charging money. You can't do all of those things, but nobody has looked throughout the last, however many years, decades probably. This just hasn't been enforced. But now it is being enforced. And so they are looking to make sure that these people are not out there scamming. All right, one final piece on the immigration issue, and this kind of goes back to the Islamic mortgages that we talked about in the beginning. Have you guys ever worked someplace where your bosses provided some type of extra consideration to, say, Muslim employees, given them multiple breaks throughout the day to go pray or something like that? Well, apparently there is a worker at Amazon who took notice that Islamic employees were given those specific break times to go pray and to do whatever they needed to do for their faith. And this individual had essentially taken some type of action, and he has attempted to create prayer breaks for everybody at the same time. After 2 years of paying associates during their additional breaks for prayer time, a non-Muslim attempted to take a similar paid prayer break, but he was scanned out by his manager. So they were acknowledging that they were extending an unequal benefit to one religious group while everybody else had to clock out if they were taking a break. So Amazon was just forced to post this announcement. Starting September 2nd, every associate who takes a prayer break has to clock out. So no more free time prayer breaks for Muslims. But it only took someone actually making a complaint about it, because this is an unfair labor tactic. And so Nick Plum asks the question, how does this get so messed up to begin with? Are site leaders not trained on the legal requirements anymore? It used to be that you had a big sign on the break room wall, which told you exactly the rules of how you were to behave and what your behavior and your treatment of your employees was supposed to be. But for some reason, they just started extending additional benefits to people based upon their religion, and them saying, I have to do this and you can't stop me because, et cetera, et cetera. Anyways, it's good to know that Amazon has been forced to take that back. All right, you guys, we now need to discuss the seizure of Eric Swalwell's devices, and of course the various things that he may be indicted for. But before we do, I have a quick final message from our friends over here on Rumble. Take a note of that QR code, guys. When protecting your wealth with precious metals, trust is everything, and that's why thousands of smart buyers partner with Universal Coin and Bullion and with Kevin O'Leary. That's led by Dr. Mike Fugens, America's gold expert, who was named the Dealer of the Year by the American Numismatic Association. Universal Coin and Bullion delivers unmatched credibility. And to introduce you to their top-tier service, they are offering a 1/10 of an ounce gold American Eagle or 2 1-ounce silver American Eagles at their actual dealer cost. So don't wait. Claim your dealer cost gold and silver offer today. You can do that by calling 1-800-UCB-COIN or click the link to buy now if you're on Rumble. If you're not on Rumble, call 1-800-UCB-COIN. Thank you for that. Jim Kyle says, I retired in 2017. Thank God I didn't have to deal with this crap. Good for you, buddy. And then, thank God I work at home. All right, guys. So these are all of the devices that FBI agents seized from Eric Swalwell at the airport. Okay. So, all right. So when agents confronted Eric Swalwell at the San Francisco airport over the weekend, they immediately took him into their custody. They took the former congressman's electronic devices from the FBI. They say that included his cell phone, and also his laptop. This, of course, is part of the aforementioned allegations of sexual misconduct. And then the agents entered his home in Washington, D.C. on Sunday. I'm not sure whether or not Swalwell was with them for that or if he was in San Francisco, but they had warrants, and then they seized additional potential evidence along with additional electronic devices. So the San Francisco Standard exclusively revealed the other items seized from Swalwell during that airport search were his MacBook Pro, his charging cable, and his wall charger. That's interesting because I have never known the chargers or the wall plugs themselves to be taken as part of the official evidence. Do we have any police in the audience that can confirm this? Is there anybody out there that can confirm? Is that normal that they would take the wall charger and the plug for it? Because I've always only ever seen the police just taking the device itself. I want to know if that may be an indication that the charger itself could have some evidentiary value. Because it could be, if that's the case, that Swalwell's charger had been compromised in some way. Yeah, Alpha would know, but he's not here right now. So they can go in through the plug. Marine in the Woods. And that's what I mean, that the charger could be compromised in some fashion. And so they took it to somehow check it to see if it had been compromised. Simply Rose Red says chargers can hold data. Well, I mean, on a MacBook, the charger is only for power. It's not like a data cable like for your phone. And they don't mention that they took the charger and for the phone. Yeah, bugged. That's what I was going for. All original parts. They don't want any foreign parts going in. They're saying it was sabotage, I'm assuming. Well, they haven't said anything like that at all. Okay, so anyways, we don't know specifically the items that were taken from Swalwell's apartment, but this is the other additional information. So the warrant that was issued when they went to Eric Swalwell's home was under federal statute 18 USC 242. Hold on. I see people typing stuff. Somebody tagged me and now I don't see it. The chargers and other accessories could have cameras or listening devices. Okay, that's pretty much what I was thinking, but I just wanted somebody with some law enforcement background to suggest it. Okay, so this statute applies to federal, state, or local officials who act under the color of law. And when they're acting under the color of the law, they are using their power and their position to deprive victims of their constitutional rights. And that would have to mean that the acts were committed while the official was supposedly performing their official duties. So taking a look at the full statute, Section 242 of Title 18 makes it a crime for a person acting under color of law, of any law, to willfully deprive a person of a right or privilege protected by the Constitution or the laws of the United States. Certainly, drugging someone and raping them would definitely fall under that. But there are also a whole host of other activities that Eric Swalwell could have been involved in, which would also fall under that. So for the purpose of Section 242, acts under color of law include acts not only by federal, state, or local officials within their lawful authority, but also acts done beyond the bounds of that official's lawful authority. If the acts are done while the official is purporting to or pretending to act in the performance of his or her official duties. Now think back to the Fang report that came out, and Eric Swalwell was placing Chinese affiliates of Fang and the People's Republic of China in other congressional offices. He was helping to get those Chinese agents set up as part of his official duties as a congressman. So there are so many different directions that the use of this statute could go through. So persons acting under color of law within the meaning of the statute would obviously include police officers, prison guards, and other law enforcement officials, as well as judges, care providers in public health facilities, others who are acting as public officials. It's not necessary that the crime be motivated by any animus towards a person or a group, race, color, religion, sex, handicap, familial status, or national origin. And the Justice Department notes that a defendant in the most severe cases can face life in prison or even the death penalty if convicted. B. Arthur's D, that one's for you, my friend. Now, considering that Eric Swalwell is accused of multiple counts of sexual misconduct and sexual assault, a lengthy prison sentence appears firmly on the table should he be convicted. And you have at least no fewer than 4 women who came forward to say that Eric Swalwell drugged and raped them on multiple occasions. So the ultimate sentence that people want could very likely come as a result of being convicted of one or multiple counts of this particular law. A former federal prosecutor spoke with the Standard and said that while it's unclear how Swalwell could be charged under the law, one potential avenue does exist for prosecutors. I am unfamiliar with the parts of this case that would give rise to that violation, said this individual, who added that a potential connection could be that Swalwell used his position to intimidate witnesses. Now, we absolutely know that definitely happened as well, because the FBI had, well, it was spoken about specifically in the articles that Eric Swalwell had reached out to a number of these women when they started to come forward and talk about him to the press. And he attempted to silence them. He attempted to get them to stop talking about him or talking about the likelihood of them being drugged and raped. So that's a very easy one right there. The FBI took his devices, and now they are going to have all of his communications. I think we're also going to find, as I said yesterday, that Eric Swalwell was likely using these personal devices to do government business so that he could potentially avoid FOIA requests. I think that he probably also had communications with his lawyers or with other people in government about potentially helping to shut down this investigation and shut down any of the women who were coming forward to talk about the crimes he had committed against them. Now, let's take a look at this. 18 U.S.C. 242 is a federal crime that makes it illegal for anyone acting under official government authority to willfully deprive a person of their constitutional rights or privileges. So the core element of the crime, to convict someone under this section, the government must prove 3 things. Number 1, that the person acted under color of law, meaning using the power given to them by the government, like a badge or their public office. Eric Swalwell was a congressman when these crimes were committed. He got people to work for him in Congress. He used his position to invite people to political events. He got that girl drunk at a political event and then raped her in the car afterwards. You also have to prove that the person acted willfully with the specific intent to break the law or deny a known right. Obviously, Eric Swalwell, that would be pretty easy because you have conversations between him and these women. And also you have his lawyers reaching out and trying to silence these people. You have Eric Swalwell actually calling these people and texting these women saying, don't talk about this. And then finally, you have to show that this defendant deprived a victim of a right protected by the U.S. Constitution or federal laws. That won't be a problem. All right. Now, again, the penalties. We already know up to life in prison and even death penalty. But for basic violations, you're talking up to 1 year in prison, a fine, or both. That's only if there is no major injury or if there's a weapon involved. The very fact that people were drugged and then sexually assaulted, that elevates the crime right there. If death results from the act, maybe involving kidnapping, an attempt to kill, or aggravated sexual abuse, imprisonment can be for any number of years, and that could be up to life in prison or the death penalty. So I think Eric Swalwell is 100% screwed on this instance. I think that he is likely going to see many, many years in prison. And you're probably also going to have individual charges for each of those women. And then you're going to have a series of superseding indictments having to do with a number of other crimes that he might have committed. Now, the only question is Eric Swalwell going to keep his mouth shut? And is he going to go down for everybody else around him? We already know that Eric Swalwell and Adam Schiff were basically bosom buddies, and there is a tight relationship between all of those California representatives and senators. So just imagine how many other crimes might have been committed in Washington, D.C., and how many other instances of this violation of law you may have. All right, speaking of color of law, the announcement in July that President Trump made that there was intel agencies, which included the CIA, the FBI, and the NSA, had concealed evidence of Chinese election hacking from him in the 2020 election was something that we basically already knew, and the media could have cared less. They didn't want to talk about it. But it turns out that the highest-ranking CIA officer that was implicated in this scandal is a woman by the name of Beth Sanner. And guess what? Beth Sanner is a contributor at none other than CNN at Crap News Network. There is also a 2025 book that reveals that Sanner also declassified the intelligence community assessment that kicked Russiagate off in the beginning. So she was there all along the way. And it turns out there are spy schools around the world who have adopted the 2020 spin on China as a case study in politicized intelligence, basically how not to do intelligence. So it should not be surprising that one of the CIA stooges that actually kicked off and then basically produced the death knell in the election integrity efforts back in 2020 is none other than a current employee of the Central Intelligence Agency. All right. Now, I thought that this was interesting. The woman who was elected to replace Eric Swalwell in Congress in the special election is State Senator Aisha Wahab. She is an Afghani Muslim and a far-left communist. She defeated moderate Democrat Melissa Hernandez after the two advanced in this June 16th primary. This special election moved to a race between Wahab and Hernandez after neither of the women received a majority of the vote. Wahab previously accused Israel of genocide, and she attacked AIPAC. AIPAC reportedly dumped millions of dollars into Melissa Hernandez's campaign, and with more than 95% of the vote, Wahab won 53% to Hernandez's 47%. So Wahab will now serve out the remainder of Eric Swalwell's team. And it's yet another radical left-wing crazy that's going to be in Congress. She won't be any worse than Swalwell. I can't imagine. All right. Now, the situation in Michigan that we spoke about yesterday, illegal aliens being registered through the Secretary of State's system. Haven't heard anything from the Department of Justice. Haven't heard anything from the state government of Michigan. But a clerk in Hastings Charter Township named David Olson has just released a video of himself essentially pleading with the feds to get involved in Michigan's elections. He specifically is asking for help for him to identify and remove non-citizens on his voter rolls. So he's asking for this help because we had a whistleblower come forward to Sheriff Darleaf within the Secretary of State's office and say that we are definitely registering illegal aliens and it's happening on a regular basis. Let's go ahead and hear this video plea from Clerk Olson. Oh, wait, hold on. Where is it? Well, I guess they didn't actually include the video itself. All right. So anyways, Hastings Charter Township is actually in Berry County. Berry County is where Sheriff Darleaf is the sheriff of. So Mr. Olson explained this whistleblower told Darleaf this information. He said, when a non-citizen changes their address, programming automatically registers that citizen to vote. When the employee advised the supervisor said, that's okay because it'll be caught downline by the clerks. So then Olson challenged the supervisor's statement and he said, that's not correct. Once it's in the qualified voter file, there's no way for me to verify citizenship. So therefore, the non-citizens are automatically issued a ballot or an absentee ballot. And since it's my responsibility to safeguard the voter rolls in my township, I'm asking if the federal government is interested in helping verify my citizens' voter rolls. So he appears to welcome the opportunity to have his voter rolls cleaned of non-citizens. I would be welcome to have them here. I will safeguard my voter rolls in the office, but they're certainly welcome to come and compare against mine, and this way we'll uphold the law. And then he, of course, won't have to worry about letting illegals vote in his precincts. I will definitely follow the law, and it will be fair and honest. When it comes to investigating and exposing voter fraud in Michigan, Sheriff Darleaf has probably been the most committed law enforcement official in the state. After he spoke with that whistleblower, he, of course, dropped that video. And if you missed it, the confidential informant came forward to him. They work at the Michigan Secretary of State office, and they said that non-citizens basically automatically get registered to vote. And then you get these merging of records, and the program just automatically prints them a ballot. It automatically puts them on their local voter rolls. And the informant or whistleblower attempted to show their supervisor that this was happening and said, hey, this is obviously not good. We can't allow this to happen. And they said, well, the clerks locally will find it. But the problem is that clerks don't have the ability to determine citizenship. They just get the qualified voter file. It says these people are qualified to vote. They automatically get to vote. And then those illegals end up voting in their elections. So I'm hoping that the DOJ is going to comment on this, because this is obviously a big problem. Michigan needs the intervention of the federal government, and thus far they have been going through every effort they possibly can to stop them from coming in and gaining access to these files. If a series of local county clerks allow for the DOJ Civil Rights Division to come in and ensure that the files do not have illegal aliens on them, I think that that's as close as we're going to get before the election itself. All right, James O'Keefe also visited Alaska, and he was offered by a local precinct the ballot of Senator Lisa Murkowski's brother. This was at an Anchorage polling station. In Alaska, you don't have to show an ID, and rather than look into fixing the problem in Alaska, because Lisa Murkowski did not support the SAVE Act, and she claims that the voting system in Alaska is secure, she instead suggested that James O'Keefe should be prosecuted for attempting to vote in the name of someone else.
This is James O'Keefe in Anchorage, Alaska. I'm about to get offered Senator Lisa Murkowski's brother's ballot.
The last name is MURKOWSKI. I think I left my wallet in the vehicle. Would it be possible to vote without it today?
Absolutely possible.
Oh, good.
I said, I can vote. Brian Murkowski can vote. She's like, yes, you can vote.
You can vote if you'd like to. Do you want to do a question ballot?
I mean, all I got to do is do the question ballot, then I can vote.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Brian Murkowski, Senator Murkowski's brother, doesn't even live in Alaska, but his name is still on the voter rolls.
Do you know how to spell Brian?
BRIAN.
Yeah,
That's the address.
In the correct place.
Oh, perfect.
Vote. You have a mugshot.
Oh, I think I left that at home. Blood?
DNA.
I got blood. Yeah.
You got blood. You want to leave your blood?
You're Caroline. Carolyn. Carolyn's a funny one, by the way. Thank you for helping me.
And you know what? We appreciate it too, because, you know, we're volunteers and we're trying to figure this out.
Huh?
Oh, it looks like they are volunteers in Alaska. We just had this conversation the other day about people being paid to work on elections or not being paid. So I don't know. Maybe it seems like every state is different. So James O'Keefe published this report. It's quite clear. If you know somebody's name and you know which precinct you're supposed to go to, you could theoretically vote in their place and steal their vote. Obviously, it would appear that Brian Murkowski was not voting in the state of Alaska, even though he's registered in the state of Alaska. I would be interested to know if he's going to be voting in Texas, because if he's voting in Texas and he's still registered in Alaska, then, you know, you could have multiple votes, which would then be canceling out the votes of real Americans who simply want to vote as they are choosing to. So here is the statement from Senator Lisa Murkowski. Again, rather than fix the problem, she wants to prosecute James O'Keefe for this stunt. Senator Murkowski has consistently supported the requirement of photo ID to vote. And earlier this month, she voted in favor of a separate measure on the Senate floor to do just that. However, the Save America Act is an overly burdensome, one-size-fits-all mandate from Washington. It would be impossible to implement in time for this election because people like her ensured that it would be, and would likely disenfranchise thousands of eligible Alaskan voters. In any case, voter impersonation is a crime and should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. That's actually a statement from her. This is just for us, Zach, not for them. How true that is. How true that is. That's Joe Plesha, the press secretary for Senator Lisa Murkowski. Now, I don't believe that Murkowski has commented in any further way, but the various ways that people can cheat in these elections are just so obvious and in your face at this point. And I feel like every single day we learn about a new way that it becomes possible to be able to steal an election. All right, guys. Well, I think that is going to do it for us today. I'm going to go ahead and wind it down. Let me make sure that I'm not missing anything over here. Over on Rumble. No. Oh, I do need to say thank you to Lewis and Maggie. Thank you very much. I got a couple of letters in the mail today. And hold on. Honey, I got another letter, and it was actually a card, and it was really nice, and I don't have it in front of me, and so I don't remember who sent it. I'm going to have to thank you on Monday, but I meant to bring it in here, and I was going to read the note that you left in there. But thank you very much to everybody who sent the letters this past week. All right, and then thank you to Filter Dog. Have a great weekend, everyone. Thank you to Sean Joe, who dropped a cookie. All right, you guys, that's it. I will be live tonight at 10:30 on Badlands for Only Lands. Do you have my letters that I got? I don't know. There's some. That's the problem. I think they're on the counter in the kitchen. Hold on. My lovely wife is going to grab this so that I can say thank you. Okay. And hope everybody had a great day. Yeah. I will be live tonight at 10:30 on Badlands for Only Lands. And then I am playing video games on Sunday. So if you guys want to play video games, let me know. No, there's no card out there? All right. I will find it over the weekend, and I will say thank you on Monday properly. All right, you guys. Good luck. God bless. Peace. I'll see you later.